Today, we are diving into a story of protest, of incredible persistence, and of a change that literally reshaped the world. The global, century-spanning struggle for women's right to vote. It's a journey that redefined what democracy is supposed to mean. So let's just start with a question. For most of human history, even in systems that called themselves democracies, systems that were built on the idea of the will of the people, there was this massive, glaring omission, a huge blind spot. What was it? And the answer? Well, it's as simple as it is staggering. Half the population. For centuries, the voices, the needs, and the political will of half of humanity were just locked out, completely excluded from the conversation. So here's how we're going to break this incredible story down. We'll start by looking at the historical norm, then meet some truly unexpected pioneers. After that, we'll see how the first global wave of change got started, how war and the UN became a major tipping point, and finally, we'll travel that long road to the last few hard-won victories. All right, first up, a world without her vote. You see, for most of history, women being excluded from politics wasn't some strange exception. It was the rule. It was the default setting for societies all around the globe, basically baked into the very foundation of government. I mean, just take the classic example, ancient Athens, right? The so-called birthplace of democracy. But whose democracy was it really? The right to vote was only for a tiny elite, adult male citizens who owned property. Women? They were completely shut out of political life. And this wasn't some accident, it was by design. But here's the thing. The story isn't just a simple, straight line from total exclusion to inclusion. Which brings us to our next section, because it turns out there were these surprising early sparks of suffrage that popped up way before the big movements we all know about. And check this out. These early examples were so scattered and honestly kind of specific. In Sweden, if you were a woman who was a tax-paying member of a guild, you could vote for a while. In New Jersey, for a brief period after 1776, some women who owned property could vote. And get this, on the super remote Pitcairn Islands, women could vote all the way back in 1838. Now, these rights were often temporary and full of conditions, but it shows the idea. It was out there. And it is so important to remember this wasn't just a Western story. I mean, listen to this quote from 1654. A French nun, observing the Iroquois people in North America, was stunned to see that the women chieftains had a deciding vote in their councils. The point is, the idea of women holding real political power has roots that are incredibly deep and diverse, stretching all over the world. Okay, so now we're jumping forward to the late 1800s and early 1900s. This is when all those scattered sparks finally catch fire and explode into an organized, international movement that simply could not be ignored anymore. This map gives us a fantastic bird's-eye view of how the right to vote spread across the globe. You can see the lighter colors showing where it happened first. We're about to zoom in on that very first wave, that moment when the idea of women voting went from being radical to becoming a reality in a few trailblazing places. And here they are, the absolute pioneers of the modern era. The Wyoming Territory in the U.S. got there way back in 1869. Then New Zealand became the very first self-governing country to give all women the vote in 1893. South Australia followed, but they went a step further. Women could both vote and run for parliament. And then in Europe, Finland led the charge in 1906. So how did they do it? Well, there were basically two major playbooks. On the left, you've got the militant suffragettes, led by people like Britain's Emmeline Pankhurst. Their motto was deeds, not words. Think protests, disruption. On the right, you see the results of the suffragist strategy, which was all about peaceful constitutional change. And what a result. Those are the first 19 women ever elected to Finland's parliament in 1907, a direct outcome of getting the vote. All right, next up, the world enters a period of massive upheaval. The two world wars would bring unimaginable tragedy, but they would also completely shake up societies, and in a strange way, dramatically speed up the cause for women's suffrage. Think about it. As millions of men went to fight in World War I, women poured into factories, worked on farms, and ran offices like never before. They were essential to the war effort, and that made the old argument that women were somehow unfit for public life look pretty ridiculous. This huge shift in public opinion was the catalyst that pushed suffrage across the finish line in huge global powers like Canada, Germany, the UK, and the United States. But, progress wasn't even, and this is where it gets really ironic. This is a French poster from 1934, and it basically says, women vote everywhere else in Europe, but French women don't. Can you believe it? France, the home of liberty, equality, fraternity, was a major holdout. They didn't grant women the vote until 1944. Now, after the devastation of World War II, something huge happened. The brand new United Nations adopted the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And right there, in Article 21, it says the government authority must be based on universal and equal suffrage. And that right there, that changes everything. This wasn't just a local issue anymore. It was now officially a fundamental human right recognized on the world stage. So, the UN made it official. The battle was won, right? Well, not quite. Our final section is all about the surprisingly recent and incredibly tough fights in the countries that were among the very last to give women the right to vote. Okay, let's play a little game. Think of Switzerland. Stable, modern, European democracy. When do you think women got the vote in federal elections? The 1920s? Maybe the 40s? Nope. The answer is 1971. And if you think that's late, hold on. Let's just look at its neighbor, Liechtenstein. Women there had to wait even longer. They finally won the right to vote in 1984. And this brings us almost to today. The very first time that women in Saudi Arabia could both vote and run for office in local elections was 2015. It's just a powerful reminder of how recent this fight really is for so many. This image from 2004 is just so powerful. It shows women in Afghanistan lining up, many for the first time in their lives, to vote. It's a picture of incredible hope and progress. But it's also a sobering reminder of how fragile these rights can be. Since the change of government there in 2021, no national elections have been held at all. Look, getting the vote was never just about a symbol. It had real-world consequences. Researchers have actually linked women's suffrage to all sorts of positive changes in society, things like economic growth, the creation of social safety nets, and even, believe it or not, a reduction in wars between countries. When women are part of the political process, things really do change. So, from that ancient blind spot to what is now a nearly universal right, it has been a long, transformative, and hard-fought journey. The right to vote was a foundational battle, and for the most part, it has been won. Which leaves us with one final thought to chew on. What's the next frontier in the ongoing quest for true political equality?